from God's Unchanging Word Studios in New Orleans, we are pleased to bring you news, nuggets, and insights with today's host, Tom Carey.
It's been a difficult year. Jobless rates are in double digits. Homelessness and hunger are at all-time highs. Peace in the world is fleeting. There is war, there is terror. How can we give thanks? There was a day years ago, not unlike today, when terror was everywhere. Foreign occupation came from distant countries. Death and destruction were commonplace. Peace could not be found. Yet, into that world 2,000 years ago came the Prince of Peace, who lived and died and rose again for you and me. While your world may seem to be falling apart, Jesus overcame the world through his life, through his death, and through his resurrection. And because of him, we can be thankful today with hope in our hearts that a better day is coming. Hope, bought with a price. And for that, above all else, we give thanks.
Well, greetings everyone, and welcome to our very special edition of News, Nuggets, and Insights. Today is our Thanksgiving Day special, and today is November 20th, 2020. We got a lot to talk about today. We're going to focus our program built around Thanksgiving, and we're going to talk about some important issues that we're going to have to face as God's people is going forth. We're going to begin with X marks the spot. Again, this is one of those stories that you just can't make up. Then we're going to move into a post-election world. If everything remains as it is today and President-elect supposedly moves into office, what can we expect? Then we're going to talk about the books of Peter and the end-time elect. So, all right, so let's get into our program. Before I begin, though, let me announce, as we did last week, we are still as frustrated as many of you are who've been writing in trying to catch the program, and we sure thank you for sticking with us and catching it later on our live stream. We're trying to get the live stream working. Jeff was in here again yesterday with Cox, and I've been on the phone with some of the management, and we will again today. As of Monday, they got the wiring all back to where it's supposed to be, but they still got the same issue of problems with live streaming. God willing, they'll be back out and have this thing fixed by this Sabbath. But we just wanted to mention to you in case it doesn't come, so you understand that we are trying to work on it. And hopefully we'll be back up and running by this week. So let's begin. November 26, 2020, Thanksgiving Day. So this is our last program before we actually move into Thanksgiving. So let's begin with just two videos. The first one, which we like to use, and we've used it a couple times, but we have so many new people this past year in our lives, in our audience. I wanted to share with you again the history of Thanksgiving from the History Channel. Let's play the video.
To most Americans, the Pilgrims of Plymouth, Massachusetts are the iconic inspiration for today's Thanksgiving feast. After the winter of 1620 killed almost half of their people, the colonists formed a relationship with the neighboring Wampanoag tribe, who taught them about fishing, planting, and hunting. By autumn of 1621, the colonists had collected enough food to feed the community through the coming winter. The Wampanoags joined the colonists for a 3-day feast in honor of their bounty. The feast probably did not include our modern Thanksgiving staple, turkey. More likely, the colonists and Wampanoags dined on roast goose, along with corn, codfish, and lobster. This 1621 harvest meal is now commonly thought of as the first Thanksgiving. Yet for later generations of colonists, New England days of Thanksgiving had little to do with the 1621 harvest festival. Theirs was a religious holiday, descended from Puritan days of fasting, prayer, and giving thanks to God. Every autumn, the governor of each colony would declare days of thanksgiving for bountiful harvests, victorious battles, or drought-ending rains. In 1777, the Continental Congress decreed that all 13 of America's colonies celebrate a national day of Thanksgiving that year in celebration of their victory over the British at Saratoga. By the mid-19th century, many states celebrated the holiday. However, the date could vary by weeks or even months. A determined magazine editor named Sarah Josepha Hale set about establishing a national Thanksgiving Day. She passionately believed that such a day would help unite a nation headed towards civil war. Hale began a one-woman letter-writing campaign, urging politicians to establish an annual day of Thanksgiving. Her efforts were finally rewarded by Abraham Lincoln, who saw the unifying potential of the holiday. In 1863, 4 months after the victory at Gettysburg, he declared the last Thursday of November to be Thanksgiving Day. By the 20th century, Thanksgiving was a welcome day of leisure from a 6-day work week. In the 1920s, the National Football League was formed. In an effort to boost attendance, the fledgling Detroit Lions devised the concept of a Thanksgiving Day game. Parades also became a Turkey Day tradition, and department stores quickly saw their value as a kickoff to the Christmas shopping season. The Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade began in 1924, and year after year, millions of New Yorkers braved the cold to watch the festivities. Most of all, Thanksgiving is about family. With modern life moving faster than ever, Thanksgiving gives us a day to take a collective breath, reconnect with loved ones, and remember just how much we have to be thankful for.
Here's the turkey.
That's the way it was at the beginning till today. Audrey's found a great little video on our second video for Thanksgiving, dealing with some of the circumstances that we are encountering this year. As you know, I'm sure you don't need me to tell you, this is a Thanksgiving like not any other in modern times. So the second video here is called Thanksgiving in All Circumstances. Let's play that one. I really want to appreciate Audrey for taking the time and effort that she goes through every week to try to find us great little videos, and nothing can be more timely than that one there. As God says, to be thankful in all things. And as we know, the times that we've been moving in, it's going to take a lot of faith, a lot of endurance to be able to be thankful in the times and the trials that we're going to go through. So anyway, we need to focus on those positive things while we go through that. All righty, let's begin with You Just Can't Make This Up. New COVID restrictions regulating you in your own home, even during Thanksgiving. Let's see, let me back that up again. I've got a video here. This is from Tucker Carlson. Actually, there's a couple of them that we're going to play. This is the first one, showing how the government now is beginning its reach into your own home. What began is shutting the country down for about 3 weeks so that we can get a grip on this COVID, has now moved into changing the entire world, and we don't expect it to go back to the way it was. But this one here is talking about Thanksgiving in your own home. Let's play that video.
If you were to somehow get inside the brain of any authoritarian, you would find that their fantasies aren't the conventional fantasies. An authoritarian fantasizes about controlling you. And coronavirus is given the perfect pretext to do that. Now they force their way into your home. You're not going to believe this story. Rick Leventhal has it for us. Hey, Rick.
Hey, Tucker, for anyone in New York or California, it'll be a holiday season like no other. Two governors with similar mandates arguing the only way to slow the spread of COVID-19 is to start shutting down again. Starting this Friday night, a 10 p.m. curfew will be in effect for every bar, restaurant, gym, and liquor store in the state of New York. Restaurants can still serve food curbside for pickup or delivery, but no alcohol to go. And indoor and outdoor gatherings on your own property will be limited to no more than 10 people. Governor Andrew Cuomo says the parties are the problem, blaming them for the spike in cases, and says if the new restrictions don't slow the spread, he may shut down gyms and indoor dining altogether. And he's demanding New York City's mayor deploy the NYPD to enforce the new rules.
There are only two fundamental truths in this situation. It's individual discipline, and it's government enforcement.
And over here on the left coast, Governor Gavin Newsom has issued similar new guidelines ahead of the Thanksgiving holiday. No more than 3 households can gather together at a time. Gatherings must be outside and last 2 hours or less. Attendees can use restrooms as long as they're frequently sanitized, and singing, chanting, and shouting are strongly discouraged. Tucker, I swear I did not make these up.
I was literally just thinking that exact same thing. Rick Leventhal has gone rogue. He's writing fake news again.
No, I didn't. I didn't do it. I'm just telling you what he said.
It's just unbelievable. So much is. Rick Leventhal, thank you for that.
Sure.
Well, I'm laughing about it because hearing a guy on TV now saying, hey, you can't make this stuff up. But it got worse. I mean, there's like this one upsmanship now. So New York started, then it went to California. The state of Washington now, the governor has declared that only one family can get together for Thanksgiving. And that would be your immediate family, and that can only be no more than 10. So it doesn't stop. The concerning thing is here is there's 2 things that Governor Cuomo said that the resounding fact, first of all, is that you have to condition yourself to listen. And the second is, if you don't, we got government who's going to force you to. This is talking about Thanksgiving in your home, that they're going to have government officials come in your home because you're not following the law of Thanksgiving now. This is absolutely incredible what's going on. This is only the beginning because, see, there's going to be what's called the Great Reset. I'll talk a little more of that as we get through the program here. But I'll be talking about it in sermons, and you're going to hear a lot about it in the next month or two as the Great Reset begins in Davos in 2020. So now, supposedly there's a vaccine. Whether the church members decide you want to take it or not take it, I'm not going into that issue here, but I'm talking about for the rest of the world here. So supposedly there's a vaccine that's coming now. We have the second one in 2 weeks, that this one now is 94.5% effective from their early test trials. The Wall Street Journal has reported this. We brought it out last week about the politics of what's going on with Pfizer and COVID-19. Governor Cuomo again suggests that we should hold off the vaccine, for the COVID-19 vaccine, until after the President Trump is out of office. And I'm not making this up either. This is in the same category. You can't make this up. We've got, let's put this in perspective. We've got a virus now that they're claiming is killing off so many people. It's got so many people sick that we got to shut down the entire country. But we can't use it if we got it because it might give the president credit. So we're going to wait till what? After January 20th, so that they can begin to use it. So you got another couple months. Just let it continue to die. Let the people die. Let them get sick. Because we don't want the president to get credit for it. Now, I'm not making this up, because you can't make it up. We got a video here. Let's play the video.
We learned yesterday that we may soon have a working coronavirus vaccine. You'd think that news would be greeted with joy on the Democratic side. Democrats believe vaccines are the answer to everything. Shh, don't ask questions. Just take the shot. But New York Governor Andrew Cuomo had a very different reaction. He's worked hard to get his body count high. He doesn't want anyone, not the White House, not Big Pharma, to get in the way of that.
The bad news is that it's about 2 months before Joe Biden takes over, and that means this administration is going to be implementing a vaccine plan. You have 2 months, and we can't let this vaccination plan go forward the way the Trump administration is designing it, because Biden can't undo it 2 months later. We'll be in the midst of it. And I've been talking to governors across the nation about that. How can we shape the Trump administration vaccine plan to fix it or stop it before it does damage?
Oh, so we have the vaccine, but you can't have it because the orange man is still president. Okay. Back in April, when he didn't realize the vaccine might come out while Trump was still president, Governor Cuomo had a very different reaction. Here it is.
Well, when is this over? I say, personal opinion, it's over when we have a vaccine. It's over when people know I'm 100% safe and I don't have to worry about this. When does that happen? When we have a vaccine.
Dr. Mark Siegel is a Fox News medical contributor. He joins us tonight. Dr. Siegel, thanks so much for coming on. I didn't realize who was president determined the efficacy of a vaccine.
Tucker, it doesn't. Now, this is the tale of two men. And we're going to start with the first man there, the governor of New York, who's playing politics and is grandstanding and is saying it's bad news on what may end up being one of the most important days in the recent history of science. All of this work coming together, the public-private partnership, making a vaccine, now finding out it's 90% effective in the late trials. Such an exciting day, and he's talking about shaping it or possibly blocking it. That is the worst, because we already have a vaccine compliance problem in the United States. Now, let's contrast Governor Cuomo with another man, a man who came up through the ranks, a man who did it through hard work, nose to the grindstone, didn't inherit it through his family, mind you. And he worked and worked until eventually he became a 4-star general. And then he became the head of supply for the entire armed forces. And then he was tapped by President Trump to become the chief operating officer of Operation Warp Speed. And that man's name, remember this name, Tucker, you know it. It's Gus Perna. And we haven't heard enough about Gus Perna. Let me tell you about him. He's working behind the scenes on a program called Tiberius, where, just like the Roman Tiberius, he's looking at it from a computer point of view. So when the vaccine is deployed, that's right, deployed, he's going to be able to track it. We have a problem with this vaccine. It has to be stored at 80 degrees below 0 centigrade. But Gus Perna's on top of that, and he's working with Pfizer, and Pfizer already has in place the plans for deploying this vaccine, where it's going to go, where the supply chain is going to go. And Gus Perna was asked recently, 4-star general Gus Perna was asked recently, what are you going to do, General, when the FDA gives an emergency approval for this vaccine? And you know what the general said? One word, Tucker, execute. Execute. And you know what? He said within 24 hours, the first batch of this vaccine is going to be in the right place all around the country, stored with dry ice or potentially with liquid nitrogen. The facilities will be there. The clinics will be there. The hospitals will be there. The pharmacies will be there. And you know what? I believe him. Now, I have a question for you, Tucker. Who are you going to believe? This governor who changes his mind every second on the political whims, or the general? Tucker, I choose the military in this country every time. Tucker?
The truth is, if you've been following this, that once the word's given that they can use it, within 24 hours it'll be on the ground around the country. There's another problem. I'm talking about another time, but I want to introduce right here, is that the politicians here in America now, with all of this, said it's not right that the United States use it, that we need to give it to the rest of the world first. That brings in the principle that we read in Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28, where it says that you will plant and you will reap, but you will not enjoy your harvest. The tax-paying dollars, whether you agree with the vaccine or not, the rest of the world is going to get it, or they're going to try to get it, to break down a level playing field. Because it's not fair that the United States would get it first, even though they spent the money to develop it. So I just want to bring that out. Why? Because that's showing us now where the world is going to begin to change, because the world leaders The economic leaders from around the world, when they meet in Davos, what they're looking at is seeing how the lockdowns now and the removal of your freedoms can be used to bring about the green change for the environment. It's coming, and you need to be aware of it. So when you see pieces of information like this today, you need to understand that this is the foundation. This is the testing ground that they're going to push as far as they can to see what they will do next to be able to as the Pope says, to reshape and reimagine the rest of the world. So now, let's get on. Another story. Here we go again. Another story from You Can't Make This Up. X marks the spot. Now, this is amazing. We were sitting around talking last week in our meeting with our team of what to discuss for the following week, and this came up from one of our team members, Deborah, and she brought up about X. Let's talk about the X on birth certificates, but actually it's even gotten bigger than we ever realized on this X. It's called non-binary. In other words, you're not bound to your gender. You can be any gender you want, and you can change it whenever you want. But now it's getting all the way down to into birth certificates. And actually it's been taking place in America, now around the world for a lot of years. This trans non-binary person is someone who doesn't identify with the sex that was assigned at birth. Also has a gender identity that can't be categorized exclusively as male or female. I like this the way it was written. I don't agree with what I was assigned at birth. No. It's what you're born. You're not assigned, you're born that way. God says he created male and female. He didn't assign them a gender, he created them to be that way. So the whole premise to begin with, non-binary, doesn't exist. So let's look at it a little bit further. New York creates a gender-neutral X option for birth certificates. So these are parents that they want to be fair to their child. They don't know if they're going to be a transgender, a gay, a male, or a female, so they put down X. This came out 2 years ago. This was in 2018 that this came up. So people who were born in New York and do not identify as male or female can now opt for the third generation. So if you don't like what you are, you can actually go into your birth certificate now and change it. So not only can you be born with an X, you can go back and you can change it to whatever you want to be right now on your birth certificate. This change may seem small, but this is a quote, but it is monumental, says Tanya Asapanasa Johnson Walker, a transgender activist who took part in the signing ceremony and spoke of an anxiety that goes with living with gender mismatched identification. I guess I just don't understand it. I understand what they're going through, but anytime you get away from God's law, you're not going to find the peace. God says, great peace have those who know the Lord. So when you get away from God, you don't realize it. Part of the reason these anxieties exist because you have moved out of the confines of what God says brings peace, and you've moved into a chaotic world of Satan. This is evil. I mean, there's only one. There's only male and there's only female. There's only one way to go. You cannot go any other way and expect that you're going to find peace. I don't know why that's so hard for people to comprehend. And it's simply because they just moved away from God. And so that's what you're faced with when you move away from God. It goes on. Massachusetts has officially become the 16th state to offer trans, non-binary, and intersex residents a non-binary option on their driver's license and state ID cards. 16 states already. I mean, by the time we finish the program, it comes out this week, it might be 17, the way things are moving these days. So now, I don't know how much more we can say about that. We're going to talk a lot more about it because it's affecting the way society moves. Let's talk about post-election. Last week we began with talking about the election and the stealing and the things that were going on and the fraud. Not a whole lot's really changed. There's information out there. On one side, they're bringing out everything supposedly that's happened, and a lot of it they're proving. The left side saying there's no proof. Well, if you can't bring it into court and bring the proof, then there'll never be proof. Where it stands now, pretty much the whole world has accepted the election. So unless God does something, where the scripture we brought up last week in Mark 4, and it says that God will bring to light all things that are done in evil, unless God decides to open things up, to bring out things that actually happened in the dark, to change things around, which is going to take a Supreme Court judgment, because it's not being brought into the states. The states will not listen to these cases, even though there's 1,500 people now who have signed affidavits. Even though there's cases, even as of yesterday, found another 2,600 votes that weren't counted. States across the country showing that there's been problems and fraud with lots of information. The states' courts are saying we're not going to hear it. It appears that this is where it's at. So what I'm going to bring out today, so if things stay the way they are, many of the things that you and I are going to have to look at, that we're going to have to deal with in the changes coming forward, because they are going to affect your future and mine. To begin with, one of the things here, this was interesting, is Pope Francis congratulates Biden, who will be the second Catholic president. Yes, since John Kennedy, this is the second Catholic president. That's all there's been. Pope Francis, the leader of the Roman Catholic Church, offered his congratulations to President-elect Joe Biden during a call on Thursday morning. So that was last week, all right, November 12th. He called, and it was quite interesting that the Pope called him up. I don't know that we've seen that in the past. It might have, but I just don't remember seeing that. That's an interesting connection now, because you see, everything the left stands for, we'll have to bring in to support what the Pope is pushing. And they are definitely in that connection point, the 2030 agenda. All of that is coming in the near future. Look what else is coming. Remember the Muslim Brotherhood? Just because you haven't heard from them in the last 4 years doesn't mean they're gone. They have suddenly showed up on the scene again. That's right, they're back. Following the presidential election and the possibility that Biden has won the election, the Muslim Brotherhood has come out of hiding. They're out of the hole. Now, this is from Gatestone. The labeled terrorist organization, Muslim Brotherhood, said with a straight face that it wishes Mr. Biden, the American people, and the peoples of the whole world to continue to live in dignity under the principles of freedom, justice, democracy, and the respect for human beings. And this is what it says. They said it with a straight face. Promoting the support of President Biden. If you remember, in the Obama administration, the Muslim Brotherhood members moved into power in the White House. You remember that? With the President Trump, that all was reversed, and it moved out the Muslim people, the government and the Muslim people. So when you see all of this, what we're looking at is you're looking at the moving in not just the left, but moving in the Muslim faith to move into our government, White House again, like it was before. All of these things you didn't realize they were gone, but they're back. And so immediately everything begins to move and shift in our world for things that you and I had protections for 4 years. Those protections will be gone, and we need to be able to recognize those as they come and be prepared. So it is possible that we're beginning to see the laying down of the foundation of the beginning of the time of the troubles for this nation, which will move into the time of Jacob's trouble and the wearing out of the saints. I'm not saying we're there now, but you see now, simply from the shift in an election from one person to another, how the whole world now is moving. And we said this before the election, that this is not an election about politics. It's an election about the spirit world of what's going to shape the future. And that's what we're looking at coming out today. Going on. There's several reports now confirming that the Muslim Brotherhood support for Biden so that the organization would be able to avoid restrictions on the political Islamic movements. They are now hoping that the U.S. will remove them from the list of terrorist organizations. It doesn't say they're going to change, they just don't want to be on the list. Let us continue to do what we're doing and quit calling us terrorists. It's amazing, but that's what's going on here. The Muslim Brotherhood are partners of the Democratic administrations in ruining the region and supporting extremism. As we saw it in the Middle East, that it went across, and terrorism went across the Middle East, well, it'll be back because they'll get the support and they will get the financing that they don't have right now. So the message the Arabs are sending to the U.S. administration is, do not repeat the mistakes that former President Obama made, whose administration sided with Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi, a Muslim Brotherhood member. This is the rest of the Arab world now. Excuse me. That's not the United States. The Middle East, who are finally coming together and have been signing peace accords, and many more who are coming to bring peace in the region, the Arab states are saying, please don't do what the Obama administration did in siding with the Brotherhood. Now, that's got to wake a lot of people up, but it's not going to be reported in the news over here. So now, let's begin this is 5 things that the Biden administration are going to bring in that he says on his first day. So I don't have time to go through what's the ramifications of each one. I just want to bring out what he says they're going to do. On January 20, 2021, Biden will be sworn in as the 46th president of the United States, providing things remain as they are today. As soon as his first day in office, Biden plans to sign at least 5 executive orders that could reverse several of President Donald Trump's policies. The executive orders on the first day, first one, Paris Climate Accord. They need to do that to keep the left of the left, the far left, the radical left, to keep them in check because they definitely want this Green New Deal. So Biden wants to rejoin the Paris Climate Accord. So Biden said he would build upon President Barack Obama's efforts to fight climate change. As part of his plan, Biden proposed $2 trillion in clean energy and infrastructure spending. He also wants to have a net zero emissions by 2050. So that means all the oil industry is gone. The car you drive today is gone. Airplanes you fly today, they're gone. Zero emissions. So they're going to have that all by 2050. And he's going to put out right up front $2 trillion. Now, of course, he's got to get it past the House, but the House is controlled by the Democrats, and the Democrats are being controlled by the radical left. So they'll get their way. Just continue to run up the debt, begin to change the nation. 2, World Health Organization, the WHO. Now, I thought this was pretty interesting, that picture that you're looking at up there with the mask on, because that's pretty much the way it is. It's interesting that we have to all wear masks. It's like, well, everything's being stolen from us, including our freedom. All right? So Biden wants the U.S. to rejoin the WHO. The coronavirus will remain at the top of Biden's agenda in 2021. He's forming a coronavirus task force to address the COVID-19 pandemic. He would undo Trump's actions to withdraw the U.S. membership from the WHO and rejoin it as a global health leader. So all the issues and all the money that has been taken out of that because of the bad information, and believe it or not, the support for China. That was one of the main reasons that we pulled out of it, because they said nothing about what was going on in China to bring any retribution back to them for what was caused, or even focus on it, so we pulled out. Well, they're going to put it all back the way it was, going to go back to business as usual. 3, he's going to remove the travel ban of the Muslim countries. Did anybody miss that there's been no terrorist attacks on U.S. soil? There have been attempts, but you notice that they've been gone. In fact, even the beheadings in the Middle East pretty much been gone. And in Europe, very little going on in Europe. All of that is going to change again because the monies is going to be reversed to give these terrorist groups the money that they need. So Biden plans to repeal the travel ban from many Muslim countries. Trump, through the executive action, instituted a travel ban from Muslim countries such as Iran, Libya, Somalia, Syria, and Yemen, which were later adopted to include North Korea and Venezuela, the countries that were bringing about terrorism upon the rest of the world. 4, the Dreamers, and you know of the DACA or the Dreamers Act. Biden plans to reinstate the Dreamers program, which will allow children of the undocumented immigrants to remain in the U.S. He would ensure that DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, would continue to allow the immigrants to live to work in the U.S. without threat of being deported. They will also they will try again and it may get across to give them insurance, to give them all the benefits that taxpayers pay here in America that quite often they can't get themselves. So that's number 4. Number 5, a military ban. This is quite interesting. All the work that's been put into the efforts of restoring the strength of a military is all going to be reversed one more time. Biden plans to repeal the transgender military ban. So we're going to allow the transgenders to come back into the military again. So while Trump banned the practice through executive order in 2017, Biden would undo Trump's policies. Specifically, Biden, as commander-in-chief, would allow the transgender individual to serve openly in the U.S. military. So that's one of the first day he's going to be able to reverse all of that. And I don't know if you paid attention to it, but in this transgender that's been going on, there are now 16 transgenders in government office in high areas. So it's the continual move to what Jesus Christ says in the days of Sodom during the Trump administration continue to deteriorate. So it will escalate now when you see when they're giving full permission and support in the finances from the federal government. So those are the first 5 things that we're going to see that he says he's going to do on his first day in office. So now next week we're going to talk about how that is all going to come into play with the ban that we're seeing of COVID-19, the change in the administration, the Pope's agenda, and the Great Reset. This is going to revolutionize the world in not a good way. The Great Reset that takes place in Davos in 2021, this January. So we need to pay attention to it. And you're going to hear a lot more about that in the future, and I will definitely be talking about it because I've got leadership now on tape where they're saying that they're going to use everything they're learning about COVID-19 and the world restrictions and the lockdowns to put into place to bring about the changes to take the wealth and the movement of the world and distribute it equally to everyone. You're going to begin to see when God warned, because you have rejected me, the fruits and the blessings of our nation will be given to the rest of the world at your cost. It's coming. I mean, this is not being made up. It is coming, and it begins to take place with the foundation in 2021. The Pope has already began the alignment of the re-education process to accept this, and the UN will begin to be the force that will regulate it. Just like Governor Cuomo said, 2 things remain. You're going to have to control yourself, and if you don't, we're going to bring in the government to shut you down. It's coming on a world scale. We'll also talk about the Green New Deal. Remember the Green New Deal? We talked about that just a couple years ago and how it's going to affect the rest of the world. In 1 Corinthians, we see, it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and I will bring to nothing the understanding of the prudent. When you look at the Green New Deal, and if you haven't looked at it lately, go back and take a look. What they plan to do is impossible. It will take over $90 trillion to accomplish it. It can't be accomplished on the world scale. And if we get into this Green New Deal, the Paris Climate Accord, it's going to cost the United States billions and trillions of dollars. And by the way, China doesn't have to come into the Green New Deal till 2030. Why is that? They're the greatest polluter on the planet right now. But they're excused, but we're not. That's just something to think about. All these things now that we talked about were going to come, they all come back into play now. You thought they were gone? Well, they're not. They're still there. They've been in hiding, just waiting for the time. All right, let's take a break now before we get into the second portion of our program. I should have changed that. I got the spies and the Israelites, but that's not where I'm going to go to. I'm going to go to the books of Peter because I want to lay the foundation as Peter did for the brethren in his time about the issues they were going to face. I want to talk about some of the issues that we're going to face in this time that we live today. So let's take a break. There's some great video here. It came out 2 years ago from PragerU. I want to share it with you because there's things in this video you probably haven't seen anywhere else talking about issues that pertain to God. Let's play the video and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
Food, football, and oppression. That's what Thanksgiving has come to mean to many Americans. Back in 2007, Seattle public school officials made national news by describing the holiday as a time of mourning and a bitter reminder of 500 years of betrayal. This new narrative describes the Pilgrims as arrogant oppressors who fled persecution only to become persecutors themselves, depriving Native Americans of their land and their lives. But this is wrong on every count. First of all, the Pilgrims didn't cross the ocean to flee persecution or even England. They'd been living for over a decade in Holland, Europe's most tolerant nation and a haven for religious dissenters. Free from interference by the Church of England, they feared seduction, not persecution, worrying that their children would be corrupted by the materialistic Dutch culture. That's why they risked their dangerous 1620 voyage to a wilderness continent, not because they were running from oppression, but because they were running toward holiness, fulfilling a fateful mission to build an ideal Christian commonwealth. They initially planned to plant this model society on the wild, wolf-infested island known to natives as Manhattan. But winds and tides blew them 250 miles off course, dumping the Mayflower on the frozen coast of Massachusetts. Somehow, the Pilgrims saw their dire situation as a demonstration of providential power, especially after a giant wave picked up the flimsy boat of a scouting party on a stormy December night. The turbulent sea then deposited them safely, miraculously, on a little island within sight of the ideal location for their settlement. It was a deserted Indian village with cleared land, stored supplies of corn, and a reliable source of fresh water. No, these supposedly cruel conquerors never actually invaded that village. Instead, they expressed a fervent desire to pay the natives for the dried corn they found, if only they could find someone to pay. But the former inhabitants had perished during 3 years of plague, probably smallpox, that immediately preceded the Pilgrims' arrival. One of the few survivors of that devastation turned up several months later to welcome the English newcomers. Against all odds, he proved to be the single human being on the continent best suited to help the struggling settlers, since he spoke English and had already embraced Christianity. His name was Squanto, and he had grown up in this very village before a ruthless sea captain kidnapped him as a boy and sold him into slavery in Spain. After 4 years, he was freed by kindly monks, then made his way to England, and finally sailed across the Atlantic only to find his friends and family all wiped out by disease. Over the next few months, Squanto helped the English newcomers plant crops and negotiate a friendly trade agreement with the region's most important chief, Massasoit. No wonder Pilgrim leader William Bradford called Squanto a special instrument sent of God for their good. The celebration, later known as the First Thanksgiving, actually involved a 3-day harvest festival in October, apparently inspired by the biblical holiday of Sukkot, or the Feast of Tabernacles. 90 hungry Indian warriors joined the 53 surviving Pilgrims for this occasion. Nearly half of the colonists had died during the brutal winter. The Englishmen provided some vegetables, fish, and perhaps wild turkeys, while the natives brought 5 recently hunted deer as house gifts. The preferred sport on this occasion wasn't football, but shooting, with settlers and Indians sharing a fierce fascination with guns. Though these hardy Pilgrims loom large in the American imagination, they never built their Plymouth settlement into a major colony. In nearby Boston, the later colony of Massachusetts Bay grew so much faster that it swallowed up the great-grandchildren of the Pilgrims in 1691. But the sense of purpose of the original Pilgrims left a permanent imprint on the national character. They maintained unshakable confidence that God protected them, not to grant special privileges, but to impose special responsibilities. They saw themselves as instruments, not authors, of a mysterious master plan. Today, with our continued blessings so obvious and so overwhelming, the only reason to treat this beloved national holiday as a time of mourning is that some foolish Americans actually think that's a good idea. The Pilgrims knew better. They understood that people of every culture and every era can gain more from gratitude than from guilt. I'm Michael Medved for Prager University.
I find that fascinating, the video, and when he talked about, especially toward the end with the Feast of Tabernacles, or Sukkot, and how they found themselves not as being specially favored, but as instruments of a special divine plan. Brethren, that's where you and I are today, in the world that has no idea what's coming. That God has given us the advanced understanding, the wisdom and the insight to understand that you are an instrument to bring about the plan that God set forth 6,000 years ago. What an opportunity you and I have begun. All right, so now, welcome back. All right, let's get into our second part of our program today, and we're going to talk about the books of Peter and the end-time elect. This is just a foundation because there's a lot of information down in the books of Peter that's going to be very important for you and I in the times that we live today. So often when we study the Bible, we have a tendency to see the different books as events that took place at different times in the past. But if we do that, we're going to miss the connection points as to why the events were recorded to be kept together, like we're going to be seeing in the beginning today. So in 1 Corinthians 10, we get the insight of where we are. Now, we've been talking about this scripture recently when we talk about all the events that took place with Joshua and with Moses and the children of Israel moving into the promised land, because that's the duality of the time we live today. So Corinthians reminds us of that. It says, now all these things happened to them as examples, and they were written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the ages have come. And look at Romans 15, verse 4. For whatever things were written before were written for our learning, that we through the patience and the comfort of the scriptures might have hope. And so it is with the books of Peter, because Peter was written to the brethren during the time of great persecution, during the time of Nero, the burning of Rome, and blaming the Christians. 2 Peter 3:11 says this, seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons ought you to be in all holy conversation and godliness? So when we go through what we're about to go through in the years that's coming, I don't know how fast God's going to let it move, but what you're feeling right now, the exasperation, the emotion, all the disappointments that you're watching on the news and the stories that's taking place, the bizarre developments that, like, man, you can't make this stuff up. Like the mindset of the people are gone is to give us an insight of the struggles that we're going to face, where God says it's going to wear out the saints. Because emotionally, you feel drug out. You've just worn out, like you just want to go out and just wring yourself out a little bit and start fresh. So all of these things happen. So Peter writes, he says, when you feel that way, when you see all these things beginning to take place, remember the kind of person we need to be when all these events take place. So that's what Peter's trying to do with the brethren back in his day. But they were specifically written for you and I. Look, it says of Peter, I, Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, to the strangers scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, Bithynia, the elect according to the foreknowledge of God the Father through the sanctification of the Spirit, unto obedience in the sprinkling of the blood of Jesus Christ, grace unto you and peace be multiplied. So he's capturing all the people in the areas. And so it is that we try to, with this program, be able to send it out to all of God's people. It says, blessed be the God, the Father, and our Lord Jesus Christ, which according to his abundant mercy has begotten us again into a lively hope by the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance incorruptible, undefiled, that fades not away, reserved for you in heaven. What a testimony of hope. That's at the very beginning of Peter's book to the brethren who are finding themselves in a time of persecution. the brethren were being killed. They were being hunted down and thrown to lions and burnt at the stake. And so he's reminding them of all of these things. And it is a point we need to remember in our age, in the time we live today. As bad as things are going to get, this is where God's brought us. That we need to keep a focus that our inheritance, it doesn't matter what they do to us. Remember Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? When the king was going to bring them and throw them into the fire, and they said, listen, king, you get the power to do that. And whether God's going to rescue us or not, it doesn't matter. We're not going to obey you. We're going to do what God says. Powerful words. And you and I need to reserve in our minds the very fact that you and I have to have that steadfastness of purpose, just like they did back then. And that's what Peter's telling them. That fades not away, which is reserved for you in heaven, who are kept by the power of God through faith unto salvation, ready to be revealed in the last times. Going on, verse 6. Wherein you greatly rejoice, though now for a season, if need be, you are in heaviness through manifold temptations. And that's what we're going to move into. We're going to move into manifold temptations and trials that it's just for a season. It's just for a little while, like Peter says, that your trial of faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it be tried with fire, might be found unto praise and honor and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ. We need to remember these first 7 verses in Peter are powerful verses, and that we need to put them on your wall. Put as a reminder, go back to the book, and often read, especially when you find yourself in times of trials, how special that it is with the gift that God has given to you and I. We'll talk a lot more about that in times that's coming, but it's important to lay that foundation right now to understand it doesn't matter what happens to the rest of the world. We know we've got to go through this at some point. Whether it happened now or 4 years later, we hoped it was 4 years later, it may be now. And if it does, then God's moved his timeline up. That's all it means. And he says, for the elect's sake, he will move time short. So we need to remember that. So if you're not unhappy, remember that God may have done it for our own good. Think about that. Isn't that remarkable? So anyway, that's where we are today. All right, let's begin to wrap our program up. In the mail last week, Stand in the Gap by Chuck, that's this week, right? That's going out this week. The Standing in the Gap by Chuck Hunt Jr. And the sermon I did not too long ago called Caleb, A Legacy of Courage. That's a great little encouraging sermon. So if you haven't heard it yet, get that sermon, take a look at it. I think you'll find some hope and encouragement through the life of Caleb, the legacy of courage. And also the newsletter that went out a couple of weeks ago. I just want to invite everybody who's on our program who are watching. We know there's thousands of you who've been tuning in and watching the program, News Nuggets and Insights. If you're not on the mailing list, write in. We send out a monthly newsletter, and in every month we send out a DVD offering. This past one that just went out last month is 2020. Is this how it begins? So anyway, just get on the mailing list so you can start getting this free information with lots and lots of information. All right, let's begin. I'll wrap it up now. Hopefully I got this right. Here we go. All right, there it is. Thanksgiving worship video. Wow, here's another great video Audrey has found for us. You haven't seen this one yet. Very powerful, fast-moving, uplifting video. Thanksgiving worship. All right, let's play that video.
It is Thanksgiving, and yes, we are so thankful. As we say grace, we are thankful for the turkey, the stuffing, the pie, and even Aunt Peg's broccoli casserole. On Thanksgiving Day, we are thankful for parades, marching bands, giant blow-up floats. But we will especially be thankful if our team wins the big game. We are also thankful for the special things in life, like our family, our house, our car, and of course, cable television. We are also thankful for the little things, like food, electricity, running water, and 5 a.m. Black Friday sales. But we are a spiritual people, so while in church today, we are also thankful for our pastor, our church family, potluck dinners, and short sermons. But as we look at all the things we have been blessed with, we must ask ourselves, have we missed the point of Thanksgiving? Is Thanksgiving about our blessings, or is it more about the one who has blessed us? Instead of asking, what are we thankful for? Maybe we should be asking, to whom are we thankful? The Bible very clearly describes the act of thanksgiving. It says, "Now, our God, we give you thanks and praise your glorious name. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. I will praise God's name in song and glorify him with thanksgiving. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name. Give thanks to the Lord."
Isn't that a great video? I love it. Mixed with humor, fast-paced, great music, and when it ends with praise and thanksgiving to whom we need to give thanks, which is God and Jesus Christ, his Lord, who died for you and I. Well, that's it for our program today. We hope that you enjoyed our special Thanksgiving Day program. A lot of information. There'll be no shortage, no shortage of stories I'm going to be bringing each and every single week. So as we ask each week, and especially this week with Thanksgiving, share this with everyone you know. They are going to love you. They're just going to, the warmth and the joy they're going to have when you share this to them is going to be unbelievable. Or not. Till next week, have a great Thanksgiving, and God be with you.